No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live, episode number 229. Slippery Starmer should be wanted for treason. Breaking right now, the Prime Minister who prefers Davos to Westminster has completed his long-promised Brexit betrayal. We are now an EU rule taker. Everything the 17,410,742 Brits were against when voting for Brexit. Indeed, according to Boris Johnson, we are now the GIMP of the EU.
Turning this country once again into the orange ball chewing leather trust GIMP, if I've got the right word.
Well, going back
GIMP
to
of Brussels.
Even Peston realises this is a disastrous deal.
Prime Minister, isn't this almost the worst of possible worlds in the sense that you've laid yourself open to accusations of betrayal from Brexit supporters because we are again having rules set for food by Brussels, while you're adding back just a 20th of the GDP, the national income, that we lost when we left the European Union.
So what's Labour's solution to distract from this great Brexit betrayal? Oh, putting up James Corden, one of the most hated celebrities in the UK, as an option to replace London's failed Mayor Sadiq Khan. So I'm going to outline it all in my digest next. Then we'll get analysis from former Brexit Party MEP, host of That's What She Said on Substack, Alex Phillips. Also coming up on the show today, Rupert Lowe's brutal new takedown of Emily Maitlis after the fake news agent host stands accused of spreading a disgusting lie about his rape gang inquiry. The shocking truth about Gary Lineker's forced departure from the BBC after The Sun launched a propaganda campaign despite the disgraced football host's antisemitic post, and Labour's shock bid to silence Talk TV presenters Julia Hartley-Brewer and Mike Graham. Then, in the uncancelled after show on Substack, she's done it again. Meghan Markle's shock feud with ex-Vogue editor Edward Enninful has been revealed. We'll reveal what's really happened as we team up with the Royal News Network. Sign up to watch www.outspoken.live. Three big contenders, by the way, for the first Union Jackass of the week. We'll reveal it alongside your Greatest Britain at the end of the show. But you can vote right now in the YouTube live chat. Your nominees: Emily Maitlis, nominated by Dorothy Smith for branding Rupert Lowe racist rather than caring about the actual grooming gangs. Slippery Starmer, nominated by JHP, this time for resetting Brexit and giving away fishing rights. And Gary Lineker, nominated by Madda WG Photo for his constant anti-Semitic behaviour online. Let me know your comments and I'll read out the best at the end of the show. But now, let's go. If James Corden is the answer to your political woes, then you really have to wonder about the question. So on the day Slippery Starmer has completed his long-rumoured Brexit betrayal, meaning we are now an EU rule taker from Brussels, everything Leave voters spent years fighting against, Labour has unveiled its next big idea. Put James Corden, a British celebrity now hated by locals on a Prince Harry and Meghan Markle level, a bloke who lives in a £11 million mansion in northwest London, put him in charge of London to replace our failed Mayor Sadiq Khan, who is widely expected to stand down in 2028. Perhaps Starmer is also betraying his own senses by deciding the ultimate champagne socialist celebrity, known for his diva fits and appalling treatment of waiting staff, is the right choice to save our capital city, especially when his Reform UK rival may well be genuine SAS hero Ant Middleton. Corden's political judgment is likely to be the same as his choice of BFFs in the form of the Sussexes, given he once said he couldn't shake the feeling that if Tom Watson had been the leader of the Labour Party, he would have defeated Boris Johnson to become Prime Minister. Now, speaking of Boris, his flowery language has been spot on today as he accuses Slippery Starmer of making us the EU's GIMP once more.
Worst of all, he's decided that we can pay for this. We're going to pay for the privilege of once again being ruled in many ways by Brussels. We're going to be coughing up to the EU budgets. It's absolutely absurd. It goes against what he said. He's turning this country once again into the orange ball chewing leather trust gimp, if I've got the right word.
Well, going back to
of Brussels.
And that criticism came after some astonishing talk from ex-Labour man George Galloway, read The Secrets of the Prime Minister's Private Life.
Of the victim of these crimes is, I don't know if Keir Starmer prefers men or women, and I don't care. I don't care whether he's a top or a bottom.
Meanwhile, even Elton John spent yesterday slamming Starmer as a loser.
If you've got to get rid of that and you're going to rob young people of their legacy and their income, it's a criminal offence, I think. I think the government are just being absolute losers, and I'm very angry about it, as you can tell. Big tech has so much money, and if you're a young person, you're fighting big tech, good luck. I want the government to see sense. I want it to come back on our side, because if they don't, I'm going to feel like a suffragette. The Derby's coming up soon, right? It's just, but it's really disrespectful. It's really disheartening. I supported the government. I did a thing for them at St Paul's Cathedral when the Keir Starmer said, "I want to help young people in the music business. I want to support them." Well, he's not doing it, and I did that show, and I did it because I believed, but I'm not believing so much now.
And after today's surrender summit, it is impossible to suggest anything other than Starmer being a big loser, especially after he agreed to give the EU full reciprocal access to UK waters until June 2038, a period 3 times longer than the 4-year deal that had been predicted. Nigel Farage says it's the end of the UK fishing industry. Starmer is also a loser for agreeing to align with EU laws on some areas which are subjected to the European Court of Justice. This is, of course, a massive betrayal to the 17,410,742 of us who voted to leave. But trust me, as I have been saying for years, Starmer has always planned a sellout.
Our options must include campaigning for a public vote, and nobody is ruling out Remain as an option. We've agreed that it must be subject to another referendum.
Let's try it out now. So the Tories say, we're out. The Lib Dems say, we're staying. Labour says,
if you vote for Labour, the public will decide in a referendum. And there's now only one way. Whether in this government or the next, put it to the people.
Will the Labour front bench actually be putting down an amendment for a referendum and then vote for it?
I think it's more likely that it'll come from the backbench, because almost every victory we've had...
Will Labour back it then?
Yes. There's only one way to solve this. This has to go back to the people. And Labour says, let's get it away from the politicians, put it back to the public. Yeah. But Labour's position, 3 sentences, get a better deal than his, put it up against Remain in a referendum, and do that within 6 months.
Remarkably today, even the MSM, even the usual suspects in the MSM, seem opposed to this disaster deal.
Prime Minister, isn't this almost the worst of possible worlds, in the sense that you've laid yourself open to accusations of betrayal from Brexit supporters, because we are again having rules set for food by Brussels, while you're adding back just a 20th of the GDP, the national income, that we lost when we left the European Union.
Prime Minister, Chris Mason, BBC News. To be clear, Prime Minister, isn't the truth that you've sold out the fishermen for what you see as the greater good? And a question to the European Union, to President von der Leyen. This deal involves the UK becoming an EU rule taker, which some people here really don't like. Are you pleased to have the UK back within the EU's orbit? Thank you.
Chris, let me go first. Firstly, the focus, the driving principles of the comprehensive set of arrangements we've agreed today is about bills, it's about jobs, and it's about borders. They're the driving principles. And the SPS zone cuts away a huge amount of red tape for businesses in the way that we trade. It is incredibly important for fish because over 70% of our seafood goes into the European market. So for the first time under this arrangement, our fishing communities are able to sell more easily into the European market. As I say, 70% goes into that market. The length of time for the agreement provides the stability, because what would have happened next year is we would have come off the current arrangements, but then into year-on-year negotiations where nobody knows year-on-year where they stand. This gives stability in relation to that. It also opens the door for shellfish and the like to be sold back into the European market, which wasn't available before this deal. And of course, we've announced the £360 transformation fund. So what this goes with is that access on a permanent basis, the SPS agreement on a permanent basis for our fishermen and fisherwomen in our fishing communities into that market. Huge amount of their stock goes into this. So this is good for fishing.
By the way, did you see the panic on his face when it said fishermen? Because he's so PC, he immediately had to say fisherwomen, and it reminded me of Sam Smith.
I do love fishing, yes, I do.
What?
Yeah, I'd love to be a fisherman.
What, like a fly fisherman?
I'd be any type of fisherman.
A brief moment of levity on a tragic day for Britain under the worst Prime Minister in a generation. To respond now, Alex Phillips. Alex Phillips, look, you're a former Brexit Party MEP. We will get to this disaster deal in just one moment. But I've got to ask you first, James Corden as the Mayor of London? Like, does Labour really believe this is the solution when probably Reform UK is going to be having Ant Middleton running?
Well, do you know what? I'd love to see Smithy as the Mayor of London more than I'd love to see Sadiq Khan as the Mayor of London. But, you know, I mean, let's just see what happens. I don't think he's actually going to do it. Why would he want to get sort of tied up in red tape and bureaucracy and, you know, messing about in politics at the rough end in a city which is really going down the drain? I can't see any attraction in it when I could live in the Hollywood Hills and be making millions of pounds. So I think it's probably just a sort of publicity stunt of some form. But hey, if they're having to start digging around in the realms of celebrity, it really does show how really pathetic the Labour Party's front bench is. I mean, they haven't got anybody. Everybody who's got a, you know, recognised name in that party is a screaming dumpster fire, so they're having to go to people who normally live in Hollywood.
Yeah, indeed, it hasn't gone down well. This Adam Brooks, very decent guy, posted in response to this that he was the rudest celebrity that he had ever met, and when he was asked for more detail, he said he was having a proper diva fit with people around him, proper rude, needlessly so. So actually, he sounds a little bit like Sadiq Khan, Alex.
Yeah, you know, James Corden does have a reputation, doesn't he, of being actually a very unpleasant man in reality. I mean, I don't know him at all. Maybe he's lovely, maybe he's not. But like I said, what qualifications does he have to run the city in the 7th largest economy in the world with all of the problems that London is facing today? And, you know, the thing is, most celebrities, like I saw Elton John, you know, God bless him, in the introduction there, talking about the Labour Party. They all want to vote for the Labour Party or support the Labour Party automatically. They haven't got a clue what the Labour Party stands for. They don't have a clue about politics. They think it's all about just being nice about things and being generous, which is very easy to do. It's like, you know, I'm so rich, I get to shower myself in moral rectitude by being a philanthropist. Great, well done you. But I wouldn't want that job in a month of Sundays. It's going to need someone with a lot of gumption to take over London and pull it back together. I mean, frankly, do you know what I think would be a great option? I think if Boris Johnson is going to make a comeback, he should come back as London Mayor, because actually role that suited him very well.
He was great as London Mayor, honestly, and the city was such a better place. I mean, look, I do know James Corden, Alex, pretty well, actually, but he dropped me like a ton of hot bricks the moment Harry and Meghan told him to. And I just thought that showed a real lack of character. Speaking of lack of character, I've called Starmer a traitor today, said he should be wanted for treason. And guess who replied to me, Alex? Alistair Campbell. And your old friend, your old pal, and he wrote, superb engaging on the substance as ever from Desperado Dan. And I replied, you should be in jail too for war crimes, so I'd keep your mouth shut on this one, matey. And Alex, isn't it true that the worst people today are defending this Brexit betrayal?
Yeah, of course. What would you expect otherwise? Because that's exactly what it is. They're rubbing their hands together with glee because they've only had to wait fewer than 10 years, less than a decade from that historic referendum. And let's remember, of course, we spent 4 years messing about, arguing about it, then another year sort of gearing us up to actually leave the damn union. So we haven't even had Brexit for 4 years yet. We haven't even had it for 4 years, Dan. And they're already trying to reverse it. And this isn't a deal, because do you know what a deal involves? A deal involves giving something and getting something in return. I'm not sure what we're getting in return for any of this. I mean, we're going back under what's called dynamic alignment in agricultural measures, which means every time the EU comes up with a rule, we have to just full scale adopt it without being sitting around the table and deciding what that is. Now, this isn't about if you want to sell a particular widget into the EU, it's got to apply by EU standards. This is across the board. They tell us how things have got to be done, and we just have to go along with that, regardless of whose market we're trying to enter. And we've just signed a historic trade deal with India. We've signed a sort of precursor to a trade deal with America. We really should be looking at expanding our markets globally. Now we've started to get a bit of momentum in that direction, rather than saying, how do we reshackle ourselves to the bureaucratic orbit of a failing bloc whose economies are collapsing? Fishing, we've just said, oh yeah, you miss actually being able to rinse our waters and completely dredge them dry. Have that back for 12 years. First of all, the government said, okay, 4 years. It can continue for another 4 years. You still get to fish in our waters. Next thing I read, Brussels said 5 years. Now we've actually done the deal. It's 12 years. I'm like, how did that happen? And then at the same time, this is all about the UK being able to sell weapons into the EU, because America has basically said, pull yourselves together. We're not going to help anymore when it comes to defense in your neighborhood. You've got to look after your own backyard. So they're scrambling to rearm themselves, having given a lot to Kiev, and they desperately need to restock their arsenals. And so where are they going to buy those weapons from? Well, guess what? BAE Systems is a world leader in weaponry. So they're going to be buying it from. And so they've, given us access to the EU market to sell our weapons to them. Thank you very much. We sell our weapons all around the world without having to be part of some sort of union that demands access to waters. But one thing that is a relief, actually, is in the element of the defence agreement. We haven't gone as far as the Barnier White Paper of 2018 would have liked us to. We haven't signed up to what is called PESCO, which is the strategic arm of this. We haven't signed up to full-scale foreign affairs and defence cooperation, although that could be in train. There's another element to this, which is coming out later, a second phase being authored by Ursula von der Leyen herself, of course, the failed German defence minister before she became the head of the EU Commission. So watch that space. But actually, the area that I was most worried there was going to be a major sellout, not that the rest of this so-called deal is dreadful, but the area I was desperately worried about, we haven't yet gone down that route. But it is just ridiculous. Well, come on.
See, Alex, I was speaking to someone about this earlier who's very much in the know over this, and they said initially it doesn't look as bad as it feared on the defence stage. But they then said to me, but there will be a second defence agreement on funding rules and defence. And they are predicting, Alex, I don't know if you agree, but that Starmer's real sellout will come later, because that second part will be the part where participation rules require the UK to align with EU foreign and defence policy.
Exactly. And I don't know if you and I speak to the same people. I have a suspicion we probably do when it comes to a particular EU military expert who sends out brilliant briefings. But this is the big concern here, because at the end of the day, when you see there's an argument, people say, well, Europe needs to get together and cooperate, particularly as America is less interested in jumping to our defense every 5 seconds, and you can't really blame them. And so actually some sort of EU defense pact isn't necessarily a bad thing. But when you look at how they were at the outbreak of the Ukraine invasion, the fact that they didn't want to actually apply any sanctions to Putin, they wanted to continue buying his gas. When we actually wanted to send armaments to Ukraine, the Germans wouldn't even let us fly things over their airspace. They were being that finicky. Okay, they've gone on to be a great donor now to the Ukrainian project. But actually, if the EU had been able to act as quickly as we did at the very outset of all of this, I don't think Putin would have got very far. This wouldn't have dragged on for years and years and years. So that is what EU defence looks like. Under no circumstances should we let unelected bureaucrats in Brussels decide how we defend our nation and which wars we want to get involved in. And that is the big risk going forward.
Breaking right now, Rupert Lowe has hit back hard at Emily Maitlis of the fake news agents after she made shocking, egregious claims in regards to his rape gang inquiry during a bombshell interview. He posted, "Getting called a racist by Emily Maitlis has kept the Pakistani rape gang scandal in the news for another few days. The most productive contribution she has made on the subject. Emily Maitlis accused me of making money out of our rape gang inquiry. This is a disgusting lie, and I call on Emily to publicly retract and apologise for these false remarks. I will not make a penny and have made a large donation. Do the right thing, Maitlis." In response, Liam Tufts wrote, "She will be forever remembered as a hideous individual, the way she disregarded all of those victims in her political point-scoring interview with you, which backfired monumentally, might I add. An inevitable West added racism is denying the genocidal mass rape of white English girls." Now, Alex Phillips had her own take on this Rupert Lowe interview, which has sparked a big clash between the pair over the weekend. Alex will be here to respond in just one moment, but first, this is what she had to say on Talk.
I spent time ringing in to tell you why I've resigned from Reform.
Okay.
Sorry, we'll just get this right clip up. Let's look at this now.
Now, look, I think we had an interesting little chit-chat there about Rupert Lowe, and I just want to make it very clear, and Rupert, especially to you if you're listening, I think you're brilliant. I am not going to row back from that. I think you are so talented. I think you're politically passionate. I think you've got gumption. I think your conviction when it comes to policies and what you believe in and what you want to do for this country are entirely sincere. I know you, so I don't have any doubt as to the mettle of your character. The problem is, and this isn't to say that what happened was not gross, was not awful, that you have every reason to feel aggrieved, enraged, badly treated perhaps. And I don't know particularly what was going on in the weeks and months before this big ding-dong. But I would just say this, we wanted you to come on this show so we can have a proper conversation. I wouldn't have, hijacked you or done some sort of gotcha. We could have just spoken. But instead you went to do the news agents, which are a load of extreme leftists who only set out to pillory you, not really anything constructive, and really speaking to the wrong audience, because anybody who believes in reform policies aren't listening to that plasticine-faced moron and that war criminal that he sits next to. Oh, no, that's the other one. That's the rest is politics. Sorry, I forgot that. Anyway, the sort of BBC has-beens who have finally come out as Corbyn lovers. But anyway, can we just take a moment to think about how stuff looks and how stuff impacts, right? Because that is what politics.
Rupert responded to that impassioned address by Alex over the weekend, writing, "Yes, Alex is absolutely right. I should have gone to prison for the good of the party that made false allegations in order to weaponize the justice system against me. So no, mate, I am not going anywhere. This is just the start." So, Alex, before we get into the Emily Maitlis side of things, do you want to respond to Rupert there?
I didn't suggest he should have gone to prison. I mean, I don't quite understand what his response was about, to be honest. I said to him, of course, he should feel aggrieved about what the party did. And I wasn't party to any of that and the mechanisms that took place in the weeks and months. But what I was saying is I would just rather people got on with doing politics rather than continuing to lob bricks at one another. And that's what, on both sides, it's just not edifying. We all want our politicians to focus on politics and policy making. What he went through was grim. The argument between the party and him was just deeply upsetting for a lot of people who know both sides and wants to see, if not a reconciliation, at least just a downing of tools. And I don't quite know what he means about this idea of what I should have gone to prison instead. No, what I'm talking about is day after day after day after day, both him and Ben Habib just seem to take delight in trying to keep prodding at this situation. And, there's an old saying in Italian, which is, if there is a turd in the corner of the room, stop pointing it out. It's not, and that's what my point is. I want Rupert to get on doing the wonderful Rupert things that Rupert does and not keep having to sort of remind everybody that there's this battle and people feel embittered and, people want to sort of have the final say in an argument. Because actually, and one of the reasons I said this, Reform have gone very quiet on Rupert strategically. I think it's probably the right thing to do for them to do strategically as well. I'm not talking about taking sides here. I'm talking about strategy. And when he did the podcast with the Telegraph, Planet Normal, I, out of interest, wanted to look at the feedback coming from Telegraph readers, and it really wasn't positive. Now, there'll be plenty of people watching this saying, I love Rupert Lowe, how dare she say this, because people seem to get extremely aggrieved when it comes to this. And I'm not picking sides. I'm just saying that strategically, when you look now at some of the reaction that he is getting to his content, it is more negative than positive. And that is just, that is sometimes how it goes. I worked in political strategy and PR. So, I kind of know how these things work and how you should advise people to do things. I'm not a part of Reform, so I didn't advise them in any way, shape or form about their particular approach. But there is, the favourability needle's moving. And so what I was trying to say is, Rupert, get on, do the politicking. You're brilliant at it. I know the mettle of your character. Try doing less of the sour grapes, even if you think there's justifiable reason to do so. And I'm not saying there isn't. I'm just saying you're losing your audience a bit.
Well, let's talk about that then in terms of the Maitlis interview, because I think, even though, don't get me wrong, Alex, I so know what you're saying. I get it, right? Like, why go and speak to, what did you describe her as, plasticine-faced idiot?
I confused it with The Rest is Politics. And I was thinking of that sort of plasticine character, Rory Stewart.
No, I fully knew what you were saying. But you can make the same point about why are you going there to be pilloried by Maitlis, of course, because that is what she did. However, I think because Rupert didn't play into her hands by saying, no, I'm not racist. What are you saying? In some ways, he's made the point about the fact that the left, our elite class, just do not give a damn about this issue. So let's just watch the clip in question, which he's now calling for Emily Maitlis to apologise for.
Doing this? Why are you just trying to talk about Pakistani grooming gangs when there are 4 times, 8 times and 10 times as many white grooming gang suspects?
Do you not think, Emily, there's an issue with Pakistani Muslims raping working class white underage girls? Do you not think there's an issue there?
I think there is an appalling issue with grooming when it hits any community and any age. We only ever hear you talk about Pakistani perpetrators.
Are you telling me there's no issue?
I'm telling you that you are focusing on Pakistani grooming gangs because probably you're racist and you don't believe that there are white perpetrators of the same crime. Can you deny that?
I am concentrating on it because it's a blot on our national history.
Isn't any grooming a blot on our history?
It has not been properly dealt with.
Personally, I would have liked to have seen him take a Marjorie Taylor Greene approach to Maitlis.
Donald Trump loved conspiracy theories, including yourself. He seems to attract lots of conspiracy theorists.
Well, let me tell you, you're a conspiracy theorist, and the left and the media spreads more conspiracy theories. We like the truth. We like supporting our Constitution, our freedoms, and America first. So,
what about Jewish space lasers? Tell us about Jewish space lasers.
No, why don't you go talk about Jewish space lasers? And really, why don't you fuck off? How about that?
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Now, Alex, okay, so he didn't do that. He actually just didn't play into her games. And in some ways, has she not exposed herself? Because she's actually told a defamatory lie in claiming that Rupert Lowe is making money off the rape gang inquiry.
Absolutely. And actually, I'm fed up now with the left-wing media calling people racist. It's a very strong accusation. And I wouldn't dissuade Rupert from going after her in the courts of law, because I'm fed up with the way that these people get away with doing things like that. But, we know what she's like anyway. We know what that podcast is like anyway. We know what the audience are like anyway. It's sort of centrist dads who sit there probably, when the wife's gone to bed thinking Emily Maitlis is the best thing that, since sliced bread. It's just, I'm actually fed up actually with the so-called independent media being dominated actually by big production houses and veteran leftists.
Yeah, there's nothing independent about those guys.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
Absolutely nothing independent about them. No, couldn't agree more. Okay, then this weekend, Alex, and it is worth looking into, Rupert is speaking much more about the future. So he appeared on GB News, but before that, he posted on X. Having dinner with my wife last night for our 30th wedding anniversary, it did hit me. If reform succeeded, I could soon be in prison for a crime I did not commit. There is every likelihood that I would have been behind bars for my 40th wedding anniversary, all from a false complaint regarding a non-event months before, conveniently put to the police immediately after I criticised Farage. This isn't cancel culture. They tried to put me in prison. Now I'm told by the Farage sycophants that I should let it go for the good of the country. I should move on. I had 4 armed police officers arrive at my home at 9:30 p.m. unannounced, terrifying my wife, under police investigation regarding entirely false allegations for over 2 months, having my name dragged through the mud, all driven by people I once considered colleagues, even friends. Ask yourself, what would you do? How would you feel? I understand these people are desperate for a seat from reform, but bloody hell, have some dignity. I have come to the firm conclusion reform will not deliver the fundamental change that is required. The leadership doesn't want to smash the establishment, it wants to be the establishment. Therein lies the core issue. Are they best placed now? Yes. Can that rapidly change? Absolutely. An administration required for the challenges ahead simply cannot be built on one man's ego, regardless of its unique earth-shattering size. 4 days is a long time in politics. 4 years is an eternity. A lot can change and a lot will change. So do I go quietly and enjoy my retirement at a beach somewhere, or do I fight to give the British people the genuine alternative they deserve, in whatever form that may take? As much as I enjoy a mojito in the sun, I'm not going anywhere. This is just the start. So, Alex, I get the sense, and I'm not saying he's specifically addressing that at you, by the way, but I get the sense he is talking about people like you who do think Farage is the only option. Do you want to pick up on any of those comments there?
In politics, there isn't an only option, is there? There's multiple options. That is why politics is politics, and that is why we have a democracy. But what I would say this is, 4 years might seem like an eternity in politics, but actually Nigel Farage has spent 25 years building a brand and getting name recognition around the country and around the world. It takes an awful long time of sacrifice and endeavour and industry to actually be able to get a genuine foothold in politics. It is very rare, particularly in Britain, that something happens overnight or even in one term. And so if Rupert is thinking about setting up his own political alternative, I wish him the best of luck. But as somebody who has been part of these things, who was there with UKIP when UKIP was on 5%, helped take them up to around 25% in 2014, dropped back down in the general election of 2015, some critical errors were made then. I won't bore people with the details. I've seen for the past 20 years of my life, actually, I have been part of that particular political movement in one way, shape or form. So I've seen how long it takes to grow. I know all of the things that have to happen behind the scenes from building not just an edifice at the front. You can throw a load of money into having branding and digital advertising and billboards and, fine, but it takes ages for people up there in the country to know who you are and what you represent, and to build branches and to build back office staff and to actually have the know-how of operating in politics. It isn't something you can learn at university. It's not something you're innately born with. It takes years of practice to understand how to play the political game. It is a gargantuan task, which is why even when you look at parties like the Green Party, when you look at parties like the Liberal Democrats, who've been around for decades, they're still sort of dwindling in the single figures. They're lucky if they get above 10%. So it's a huge, enormous task. I don't think personally it will be successful because of those reasons. And so therefore, I think that, it's a sort of waste of energy. But I would, I back anybody who wants to go and give it a try, because it's a wonderful country where people can do that.
Now, he went on GB News on Sunday, the Camilla Tominey show. This was interesting to me, Alex, because GB News up until this point had very much had a strict no Rupert Lowe ban, and Nigel Farage had been critical publicly about the fact that the channel had given too much attention to the civil war within the party, even though he does work for GB News, obviously. So to begin with, look, there was the little attack. So he did attack Nigel and his so-called sycophantic lightweights. Look at this.
In many interviews, I was intent on installing Nigel as the next Prime Minister and playing my part in changing the way we're governed. I don't think that's in any way not being a team player. If anybody's not a team player, it's Nigel and the sycophantic lightweights who surround him, who are just not going to deliver for the British people.
Alex, is that true that Nigel is surrounded by sycophantic lightweights?
No. Of course it's not true. Who are these sycophantic lightweights? Name names if you're going to, embark upon slurs. I don't know who he's talking about. I don't think Richard Tice is a sycophantic lightweight. I think he's the most magnanimous man in politics who worked really hard of maintaining reform, building a ban, putting in time and energy and money with David Bull, hoping one day Nigel might come back because he knew the impact on polling that would have. He knew it would send the party into the stratosphere. Do I think someone like Lee Anderson's a sycophantic lightweight? He's his own man. Say what you want to about Lee Anderson. A sycophant he is not. Do I think Sarah Pochin is a sycophantic lightweight? No, she's a woman from Runcorn who was the magistrate there, who was the mayor there, who then decided she wanted to come and stand for reform. And this is what I mean. I just wish Rupert would, I know what happened to him was vile and shoddy and he's hurt and upset. I get that. I get it. But every time he decides to focus only on lobbing bricks, I just don't think it's really, there's only so long you can maintain that.
Okay, well, can we look at one more answer, Alex? Because to me, actually, and this is, you've got to read between a lot of lines here, but this is what frustrated me most about Reform's position, which is that there's no way back. Because I think quite clearly here, and I know Rupert pretty well, I think he's offering an olive branch to the party and saying, if you were to apologise, if you did want me back, there would be a way back. Now, I know they don't want that, but I found it fascinating that Rupert was still even after everything that's happened, Alex, he was still putting out, in this interview on GB News, the possibility that it could be an option to go back to Reform UK. Watch this.
I always thought it would because I didn't do anything. But you never know in Britain. Now there are probably a lot of innocent people languishing in prison, and I intend to pursue that. But so one other option is I set up my own party. Another option would be to join Reform. But I number one, you don't win anything with bad people. And I from what Nigel has said, from what Tice has said, from what virtually all the commentators have said, they wouldn't welcome me back anyway. So look, I've got a clean sheet of paper, Camilla, and I'm going to work out what I do. We haven't got much time, and it's incredibly important that a lot of thought goes into what happens next. But put it this way, I'm more intent than ever on delivering the change that I think is necessary if we are to restore Britain to the kind of place which I used to love, and I think when it's functioning properly like it was when I was growing up, it's the best place in the world to live.
Now, see, I don't know if you read that the same way, Alex, but to me, I thought that was an olive branch. It was a significant change in tone. It wasn't, I could never go back. It said there was the potential option there, but they have closed the door on it.
Yeah, and there was a moment actually when all of this started. There was a moment that if everyone had just stopped and had a cool head, it wouldn't have gone as far as it did. It's like when you have an argument with your boyfriend and nobody wants to back down and say sorry. And rather than just, saying, right, let's just give each other a week and not speak and then come back and remember why we love each other. Someone just keeps having to have the final word. And it's a tragedy, really, because the obvious place for Rupert to be is in reform. That is where everyone would love to see him, quite frankly. But if he keeps banging on about Nigel having, a cult and having a giant ego and everyone around him being a sycophantic lightweight, why would anybody want to, share the sandpit with you if that's how you talk about them? Now, you and I have both been appallingly treated, by a particular company. We both had the option, didn't we, if we wanted to, of filling newspaper columns with things that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Decided that isn't the way to go about things. You keep your head high. You say, I wish that channel the best of luck. And I'm not going to attack it or criticize it because there are a load of people there that I considered really good friends and I want them to be successful because they are an important contribution to broadcasting in the United Kingdom. And that is, I think, the best way of going about things strategically. It's very tempting when you've been wronged to feel like you want to get that sort of instant justice. You want to have that sort of, that moment of being proven right. But very often, if you go on a campaign of attacking and bashing, even if it's justified, or even if you think it's justified, eventually it starts working against you. It doesn't have the positive outcome. And so I just wish that, if I had a time capsule and could take everybody back to the start of all of this, my gosh, it wouldn't have even taken much to sit them all around and sort things out. But I don't. That is not where we're at. And I just think that this is what I said earlier. I just wish people would sort of stop the attacking, stop the sort of bitterness, stop the public laundering of washing, and both sides can be accused of this. And focus on politics, because that is what matters. And it was great to hear Rupert saying that that's what he wants to do. And I know he does. I know he's a man of conviction. I know he's in politics to want to help this country. So I hope that there is some way that he has the most productive outlet for that, because he's a very talented man.
Breaking right now, he's finally out. But Gary Lineker has dragged down the reputation of the British Bashing Corporation so far that I think it's impossible for them to recover. This was too little too late. But trust me, I'm going to give you the true story about his departure, not the story that you've read on the front page of The Sun today. And mark my words, Lineker has been axed, he has been sacked, he has been forced out. This is one of those gentlemen's agreements so that he doesn't feel humiliated. And arguably the guy should be humiliated, right? Given his Instagram post, and this wasn't the first. It wasn't the first Instagram post, but it very, very clearly used a rat to illustrate Jewish people. This was a Nazi trope. And there's a real irony there, given this guy accused the former government of being like the Nazis. Announcing his departure today, Lineker said, "Football has been at the heart of my life for as long as I can remember, both on the pitch and in the studio. I care deeply about the game and about the work I've done with the BBC over many years. As I've said, I would never consciously repost anything anti-Semitic. It goes against everything I stand for. However, I recognise the error and upset that I cause and reiterate how sorry I am. Stepping back now feels like the responsible course of action." Now, I will show you in just a moment how this is far from the first post like this from Lineker. But notably, the director of sport at the BBC, Alex K. Jelski, at whom Lineker aimed a dig last week about his lack of TV experience, was not quoted in the press release confirming his departure. Instead, Tim Davie, the BBC's Director General, said in a statement, "Gary has acknowledged the mistake he made. Accordingly, we have agreed he will step back from further presenting after this season. Gary has been a defining voice in football coverage for the BBC over 2 decades. His passion and knowledge have shaped our sports journalism and earned him the respect of sports fans across the UK and beyond. We want to thank him for the contribution he has made." However, his former boss, Danny Cohen, who was director of television at the BBC, said, "Given the anti-Semitic nature of the content Mr. Lineker shared, it is right that he is leaving the BBC. But Mr. Lineker's sharing of the post is a symptom of the problem, not the problem itself. For far too long, the BBC has failed to put a stop to Jew hate and blatant breaches of impartiality on its services." So trust me when I say the Sun's headline today should have been "Disgraced Jew hater Gary Lineker forced out of the BBC." And it was very clear in his video, which he released on the Instagram platform, that this is a man who knows the game is up. Analysis from Alex Phillips in just one moment, but first, here's what he had to say.
Last week, I shared a post here on Instagram that contained an emoji that has awful connotations. Unfortunately, I did not see the emoji. If I had, I would never ever have shared it. The minute I was made aware, I quickly deleted the post and went on to make an apology. I would like once again to say I'm sorry unreservedly for the hurt and upset caused. It was a genuine mistake and oversight, but I should have been more diligent. I know that. I've stood up for minorities and humanitarian issues and against all forms of racism all of my life, including, of course, anti-Semitism, which I absolutely abhor. There's no place for it and never should be. So I think it's best for all concerned that I step down from BBC presenting duties altogether and not do next season's FA Cup or World Cup. The final day of the Premier League season on Sunday will be my last show. It's been a pleasure and a huge privilege working with the BBC for 30 years, especially hosting Match of the Day, a programme that is so close to my heart and an integral part of my life. I'd like to thank all of the quite brilliant, talented and lovely people both in front and behind the camera that I've worked alongside for 3 decades. You're an absolute best. The relationship with the BBC has been long and wonderful, but it's the right time for the organisation and myself to go our separate ways. Thank you also to all of you for your incredible support and love over so many years. It means the world to me. I'll see you all on Sunday.
So that's a broken man and he deserves it. But to suggest that this was one rogue post is bullshit. Ben Green's actually been doing brilliant work on this. He's put together a whole load, but let me just show you a couple. Okay? So, Lineker compares Israel to the Nazis for like the 100th time. May 2025, just days before the rodent post, you can actually see Lineker go further down the Hamas rabbit hole until he gets to full-blown anti-Semitism. Anyone comparing Israel to the Nazis should not be on the BBC. This is beyond the pale. He goes on. Mohsen Madawi is a hero to Lineker. After Lineker hailed Madawi as a hero on Instagram, it was revealed in a US court that the Columbia student activist told a gunshop owner in 2015, "I like to kill Jews." Gary Lineker pushes for a one-state solution. In March 2025, Lineker posted a video suggesting a one-state solution effectively ending the only Jewish state. That would be the end of Israel. It didn't start on October the 7th. Just 5 days ago, Lineker was desperate to provide, quote, context for an invasion massacre that started a war, and to do this, he promoted a clip from Operation Cast Lead in 2009. Same Hamas propaganda then as now. And Lineker posts a video of the Irish comedian Tag Hickey. This was just weeks after Hickey had returned from the funeral of eliminated Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. Hickey regularly defends prescribed terror groups Hamas and Hezbollah. Lineker labelled this video facts. And in June 2024, Lineker posted a fake Cristiano Ronaldo video about Gaza. The video was manipulated. Lineker never explained this to his Instagram followers or apologised for posting the fake clip. So, Alex Phillips, this is a long rap sheet, right? And by the way, I think Lineker has a right to free speech. He just doesn't have a right to take our money while propagating this view, given if you're at the BBC, you are meant to be impartial. And the Director General, Tim Davies, said that he was going to crack down on that. But what I'm concerned about, Alex, is this propaganda that this was just a mistake. This was just a one-off, Alex, and he had no idea that the rodent had been used by the Nazis.
Yeah, well, actually, looking at that particular litany of offences, it's quite tempting to think he knew exactly what he was doing. Same time, I don't understand whether this is arrogance, whether for whatever reason, and Lord knows why, he is so besotted with Hamas propaganda, why he is so besotted with this one issue, what his connection is to the Gaza Strip, why he seems to wake up every morning and feel like he's got to do something about it. I find that astonishing. But also, is this just arrogance that he's doing it because he thinks it's something that makes him seem more popular, that it's the latest lefty love-in to become involved with? Is he doing it because he mistakenly believes that someone like him putting something on Instagram is going to stop Israel dropping bombs in Gaza? I mean, it's not going to have any impact whatsoever. Or is he just sort of naive? I don't really understand what's gone on here with Gary Lineker, but absolutely, you're right, Dan. You work anywhere else, fine, have your freedom of speech. But if your employer says you're in the public eye, you represent us, whatever platform you're choosing to use, and every time you say something controversial, it comes back and reflects on us, we would rather you didn't. Now, whether that be somebody who works for a bank or somebody who works for a broadcaster, if your employer says at the end of the day, when you do things online, it comes back and reflects upon us, then you should cease and desist, particularly when, I don't care how many millions of followers he's got, is not going to move the needle any way, shape or form. And I don't really understand his obsession with continuously going down this particular route. Who's he speaking to? Who are his friends? Why is he so impassioned on this particular topic? And considering he's so impassioned, why is he also not better learned on this topic? Why has he not actually done his research properly and therefore been able to, identify what is clearly propaganda, which he just keeps retweeting and repeating? If I'm going to repeat somebody's social media post or repost something, I make sure I know who it is, the provenance of it, and if what they're saying is true. It is sloppy for someone in his position with such a big platform to not be doing that. So you have to ask, is this just naivety, or was there a will to actually put out this toxic
But remember,
stuff?
he even argued, Alex, on the BBC that the BBC had made a mistake by taking down that propaganda documentary where they had paid a child of a Hamas leader. So the guy is so far down the rabbit hole. But it's interesting because when you were just saying what drives people to this hatred when it comes to this issue, I had to show you this post from Owen Jones today in relation to the Biden cancer diagnosis, because it really is quite something. So it's responding to Barack Obama's response to the Biden diagnosis. Now, by the way, I think there are loads of legitimate questions to ask about this diagnosis. I do not trust for a single second that this is a brand new diagnosis. It has been timed to deal with the PR fallout from the new book that's about to be released by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. So put that to one side. But this is just as an extreme comment, Alex, from Owen Jones. I watched my dad die from advanced prostate cancer, but then my dad didn't arm a genocide and facilitate the total destruction of a healthcare system, condemning other cancer patients to death. Joe Biden is a monster. He should be treated by medics while he's in prison.
I mean, look, I'm no fan of Joe Biden, but equally, Owen Jones, once upon a time, wrote a really interesting book called Chavs, and sort of became universally popular for saying working class people get sneered at, they get attacked unnecessarily, there's a lot of snobbery in this country. And yet he's now sort of jumped the shark to become one of those people who would think most of the working classes themselves were bigots and racists. But it's something that happens in the independent space, particularly on the left wing, that people jump onto a hobby horse. And in order to get as much attention as possible, they have to keep getting more and more and more extreme with their views. It happens on the right as well. I can think of certain influencers, and I won't name names, particularly in America, who started off being really great value and now just look like they should be sectioned. So, you know, it's the tragic case of going it alone and having to keep ramping up the volume as high as possible. I think that's the only plausible explanation that these people who at one point seemed otherwise intelligent have gone so crazy on these issues. And to write, look, I don't like Joe Biden, but I just stepped away from that news story about him having prostate cancer, because what was I going to say? Sorry, mate, you're really old. That's horrible. Cancer's a nasty disease. I hope you're okay. Well, that's a bit sort of lily-livered and weaselly. Or am I going to sort of make a mocking joke out of somebody who has a fatal disease? No, because that's just tasteless. So you kind of think, why don't people engage brain? You know, I would look at a story like that and think, I'm just not going to engage with it. There's no value in me adding my voice to that whatsoever. And so when you do have people like Owen Jones saying, my dad died of prostate cancer, it was really vile, I hope you... I mean, it's just, come on, grow up. What's wrong with you?
I'm just going to take one moment, but by the way, as well, and Alex, I won't get you to weigh in on this because I know obviously you do work at Talk, which is owned by the same company, so I'm not going to put you in that position. So don't worry, Alex, I won't ask you to comment on this. But I was so disgusted by the Sun's coverage of this story today. So I was the former executive editor of The Sun. I had a 7-year career at The Sun. We were always very critical of Gary Lineker and his political positions, but then the new editor, Victoria Newton, came in and she has developed this bizarre, special relationship, shall I say, with Gary Lineker. But I think The Sun let down its readers with this propaganda today. So this was how they reported the news. Gary Lineker will announce he is leaving the BBC tomorrow and will not front the 2026 World Cup following an anti-Semitism row. A source told The Sun, trust me, this source is Gary Lineker, right? So this is Gary Lineker talking to The Sun. It is a heartbreaking end to an extraordinary broadcasting career. Now, would The Sun feel the same way if another presenter had said that about Christians, for example? It's just absolutely nuts that they took that position. A source told the newspaper, and again, this would have been Gary. Gary acknowledged his position at the BBC anchoring the most prestigious tournament in the world was untenable and he will not be hosting the World Cup. He offered to step down at the end of the season and did not want the BBC dragged into any further controversy. He remains absolutely devastated by the recent turn of events and is deeply regretful about how his post was interpreted. And I just thought, why? Gary Lineker hates everything about you, The Sun. Like, why are you still doing propaganda for this guy? Very disappointing, very weird. But then again, they did endorse Labour and look at where that has got us. Now, don't go anywhere. Alex Phillips is back in just 1 minute because this is so shocking. A shock bid by Labour to take Mike Graham and Julia Hartley-Brewer, the two big daily stars of Talk TV, off air. So we'll get into that in just one moment. But first, ever wonder why you can't make it through the night without a bathroom trip anymore? By your 30s and 40s, up to 1 in 3 adults deal with nocturia, waking up to pee, basically. And sadly, it only gets worse with age. Your bladder holds less, your sleep gets lighter, and hormonal changes means your kidneys keep pumping out urine instead of saving it for the morning. How annoying. If I get up to use the bathroom, I have to be honest, I'm up for hours trying to fall back to sleep. So that's what led me to try Evening Being by Verso. It has 3 grams of glycine proven to calm an overactive bladder, dropping nighttime bathroom runs. It also helps you fall asleep faster, stay in deep sleep longer, and feel sharper the next day. Plus, it's melatonin-free and has clinically studied ingredients shown in multiple human studies to calm the mind, support mood, and promote restorative sleep. And it tastes so good. I like to drink it cold, but you can have it hot too. Since starting Evening Bean, I've had fewer bathroom trips at night and wake up refreshed. It isn't just me. Take a look at their reviews. From Catherine W. I used to get up to use the washroom 3 times a night. Since using an Evening Bean, I'm only getting up 1 time a night, sometimes none. I fall asleep faster and wake up refreshed. Patricia M. I fall asleep in a lot less time than I used to, and even after getting up for the bathroom, I can get back to sleep easily. So just click the link in the show description or head on over to evening.ver.so/outspoken and use the coupon code outspoken at checkout to save 15% on your first order. Try Evening Bean tonight and wake up feeling refreshed tomorrow. That's evening.ver.so/outspoken and use the coupon code outspoken at checkout to save 15%. But now, back to the show. Breaking right now, a shock bid by Labour to get Julia Hartley-Brewer and Mike Graham, the 2 star presenters of Talk TV, taken off air. And unfortunately, we're going to see a lot more of this in this Labour-controlled administration, which believes it should have a stranglehold on free speech. We're going to get reaction from Alex Phillips, who is, of course, one of the star presenters at Talk, in just one moment. But first, let me take you through this shocking, really, really shocking call from the Labour MP Mike Tapp, who wrote of Julia Hartley-Brewer and Mike Graham. These 2 entertainment presenters, they are not journalists, need to be sacked. There is no place for this behaviour within the British media. Now, this was in response to 2 specific posts between Julia and The Sun. Let me take you through that first. So this is where Julia wrote, "Oh, just a politician thinking he gets to decide who can and who can't work in the British media because he doesn't like what they say. Nothing to see here." Julia had originally posted in response to the Keir Starmer fire at his house, "The Met Police have narrowed down the list of arson suspects to 70 million people. That's a joke, right? Very, very funny." In Mike Graham's case, it was quoting a post from Keir Starmer saying security at home, strength abroad, and he simply pointed out a fact: his own house got firebombed. Now, the other side of politics are disgusted about this. Susan Hall, the Conservative who ran against Sadiq Khan to become the Mayor of London, wrote, "Who do you think you are, Mike Tapp? Both Julia Hartley-Brewer and Mike Graham are much respected journalists, and very many of us would rather listen to them, quite frankly, than you." And it got me thinking, I wonder why Labour wants to take Mike Graham and Julia Hartley-Brewer off air. Watch.
Donald Trump for having pictures of Winston Churchill knocking around. This is the same Prime Minister who removed portraits of Winston Churchill from his office. So what does that tell you? You know, he's pretending to be somebody he's not. I don't think that's a good thing for this country. I don't think it's a good thing for our image. I don't think it's a good thing for the Prime Minister to be a duplicitous, completely and utterly hypocritical liar. How is that good in any way, shape or form? And coming out with that letter going to Donald Trump, "Oh, and I've got this letter here from the King. Would you like to come and sleep at Balmoral? Because that'll be really great, and that'll mean that we're really good friends and we can all have a sleepover together." I mean, do me a small favour.
The trouble is, Prime Minister, no one believes you. Voters don't believe you. I doubt many of your MPs believe you. I doubt your cabinet believes you. I doubt your family believes you. I don't think even you believe it at all. When you say that you need to get immigration down, but you refuse to set a cap to what you think it should be, because the last few caps have all failed. I remember the simpler, happier times of tens of thousands of migrants coming to this country, not the hundreds of thousands we currently have. But when you have no cap, we can't believe a word you say.
So, Alex Phillips, Julia Hartley-Brewer and Mike Graham are 2 of the biggest personal critics of Keir Starmer in the British mainstream media. For a Labour MP to suggest for even a single second that they should not be allowed to broadcast, Alex, is utterly terrifying. And unfortunately, we see so much more of this. I mean, in my case, for example, we had Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister, come out saying, I should never be allowed to broadcast on British television again. This was after a situation where Lawrence Fox made a comment on my show that people were disgusted by, and apparently I should have admonished him in some way. This is terrifying, Alex. The idea that any American politician would try and silence a journalist would just not happen. Why do politicians in this country feel it's acceptable rather than totally authoritarian?
Yeah, and then when you look at some of the things that the left wing say, and the left wing shock jocks, it's worse. You know, what Mike Graham and Julia Hartley-Brewer were doing there was some tongue-in-cheek play on social media. If there had been, a serious outcome to that fire, if someone had been injured, if the property had fully burnt down, I doubt they would have gone there. They would have realised that it would be beyond the pale to make jokes about it. But these weren't the most, offensive jokes going. And yet when you look at left-wing shock jocks, when you look at that interview with Emily Maitlis accusing Rupert Lowe of being a racist, like I said, that's a very serious accusation. It's a very strong word to be levelling against someone. When you look at people like James O'Brien and the contempt with which he treats people and the sort of lies that he spins as well, blaming all the riots on Nigel Farage, for instance, that to me is dangerous. But you don't have the right wing turn around and say these people ought to be taken off air, these people ought to be silenced. Just think,
Never.
Hey, there's free speech and people can say what they like to say and fight their corners. But the left wing often revert to this idea that everybody needs in some way, shape or form to be controlled if they're not on the same side of the fence as them because they are dangerous. And so you get this time and time again. I've never even heard of this Mike Tapp. I doubt his own mother's ever heard of him. So I don't really think it's any sort of serious accusation. And I would love to see the Labour Party go up against a Murdoch-controlled broadcast channel and dictate to them who and who shouldn't be part of that. They would soon realise which side their bread was buttered. But it is, we just see this all the time from the left, and especially those who are a bit wet behind the ears or sort of, nobodies or has-beens who aren't really part of the political conversation anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting, this Mike Tapp guy, because he seems to be becoming a bit of a Labour attack dog and is building up quite a lot of traction, actually, and it concerns me that they are so comfortable with the concept of censorship, because you're completely right, by the way, Alex. I mean, I very clearly remember when Novara Media, now that's the outfit that's home to Ash Sarkar, that's home to Owen Jones, they've been utterly vile about me personally over the years, but I remember when they were deplatformed on YouTube. And who were two of the first people to speak up for them, Alex? Myself and Julia Hartley-Brewer. Because actually, we so fundamentally believe in free speech on the right, if you're a true small c conservative, that we don't want to see our enemies deplatformed or lose the ability to earn their living. And it's the arrogance as well of just saying that Julia Hartley-Brewer and Mike Graham, because they're critics of Keir Starmer, that they're not journalists, that they're entertainers. I mean, I think they're absolutely journalists. They just happen to be entertaining journalists, which is great because it means their message gets more traction.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, look, this is what, when you're on a channel like Talk, it is a mixture of entertainment because you're sitting in a studio for 3 hours and trying to keep yourself occupied and other people entertained, and news and views and opinions. And there's often ding dongs of people from the other side of the fence. But it is a very uniquely flavored channel. People who listen to it know what they're getting. They know the sort of presenters who are there and the sort of views they probably hold. And frankly speaking, they have their own alternatives. They can go and listen to Emily Maitlis and, be synthetically offended by anything she might have to say. We live now in a very divided world where politics has become very, very tribal, and there are more and more voices out there. And because of such a competitive marketplace, like I was suggesting earlier, attitudes being aired and the way in which they're being aired tend to be more strident and more colourful in order to stand out from the crowd in a marketplace that is frankly becoming cluttered. But the left wing always do this. They always say, oh, someone's dangerous. They're dangerous because they believe something that we don't believe in. And yet, actually, when you look on the surface of it, all the things that are actually doing great harm to the country, be it net zero, be it uncontrolled borders, those are the real perils facing this country.
Well, indeed. And obviously, Alex, you know that I see the hope and the future in the independent media, but I am increasingly concerned that I guess the few champions that we have in the mainstream media, so certainly Mike and Julia and the rest of the team at Talk, you know, yourself, Ian Collins, Kevin O'Sullivan, David Bull, all great people. I worry about this muzzling that's going on because we've already seen it happen at GB News, Alex. I mean, both of us would say, and we were obviously launched presenters at GB News, incredibly passionate about the project, desperate for it to go well. But I don't think either of us can honestly say that that is the free speech broadcaster that we joined and that we initially championed, because for right or wrong, it has been totally muzzled by Ofcom. So it's the Ofcomunists, as I call them. So it's not unrealistic to think that there is a genuine drive, if not to shut the channels down altogether, to sanitize them. And the problem with that sanitization is that you lose viewership and then you lose support. Now, of course, for me, that's great because I'm like, come on over, come to YouTube, or you're like, come to That's What She Said on Substack. But of course, as you've also always pointed out to me, Alex, there are people in this country who rely on the mainstream media for their information still.
Yeah, and of course, we are now entering a realm where Ofcom's soon to be governing things that are said on social media and on digital platforms as well. The regulator is going to have even more extensive powers. Now, part of that, I think, is good in terms of I do think we need to regulate very dangerous content, genuinely dangerous content, such as hypersexualized content, you know, some of the pornography that's out there, so on and so forth. But the things that people aren't talking about governing is propaganda that is attacking, you know, targeted at children in particular, on things like you can be 85 different genders. And I read a fascinating piece by Jonathan Hall, who is at the moment looking into the dangers of social media and elections and foreign entities trying to, you know, destabilize the United Kingdom. And I thought to myself, oh gosh, here we go. Is this going to be a precursor to try and suggest that reform is somehow infiltrated or has been aggrandized by you know, international interference, which I don't think is true at all. But it wasn't. He was talking about things such as these extreme leftist propagandas. He talks about how enemy states might be trying to ramp up the threat of net zero to force this country to take economic policies that are completely disastrous. And same, he brought up gender and all the rest of it. So it's good to see that people have actually woken up to the real gender, the real dangers out there are actually the sort of extreme left-wing politics that became so readily normalized by the big broadcasters, and the regulator didn't do anything about it. The regulator didn't say, hello, should we be making sure that there aren't sort of narratives about questioning gender in children's programs? No, they absolutely went for it. They loved it. So this is my big concern, that even the regulator itself gets swept up with all of these mad neo-religions that are the things that are genuinely harmful to our society, palpably so.
Alex, you know, you mentioned James O'Brien earlier, and I think we both share a visceral disregard, because as you say, actually, so much of what he has done has been divisive and actually dangerous for this country. But again, I stress, neither of us are calling for him to be taken off air. And sometimes, isn't humour the best way to poke fun at these idiots? And this new comedian, Tony Lepaidas, has gone totally viral because he has done the best spoof of James O'Brien I've ever seen, and it totally makes a very serious point. So laugh at this, but also see the point that he's making.
11 is the time, and Sheila's calling from Portsmouth. Sheila, what's on your mind?
Oh, hi, James. I'm so upset. This morning, I turned the telly on and I've seen Donald Trump giving another press conference.
Okay.
And I'm just still in so much shock that this is the leader of the free world, that I just dropped my glass and spilt my drink all over the floor.
Oh gosh, Sheila, I'm so sorry to hear that. But of course, one of the things that I've learnt from my listeners over the years that I didn't know before is that the physiological reaction that can be induced by the vulgar sight of Donald Trump is very real, but you crack on.
Right, and what makes it so much worse is that it was a glass of orange juice, so you can imagine how I feel every time I've got to see that stain on my carpet.
Well, obviously, the implication being that you're now being forced to imagine Donald Trump's face smeared all over your carpet. I get it.
Exactly, James. That makes me emotional. I'm so sorry.
Hey, don't apologise. Take all the time that you need.
Honestly, James, I can't even drink orange juice anymore.
Well, don't be too harsh on yourself, Sheila. You're not the first person to feel utter disgust with the slimy presence of the orange man that we're all forced to endure together now. I mean, I find it utterly unbearable to walk past certain items in the supermarkets these days that once upon a happy time brought me almost a beatific joy. I mean, Terry's chocolate orange, Jaffa cakes, these are all ubiquitous reminders of Donald Trump's fascist dictatorship.
James, honestly, I think I need therapy because of Donald Trump.
That's nothing to be ashamed of, Sheila.
Oh, God, I'm so sorry.
Oh, bless you. I'm going to have to let you go because I'm late for the headlines, but there it is. It wasn't too long ago that I remember that we were all being told that the future's bright, the future's orange. Those of us who are old enough to remember. Remember that? How's that working out for you?
Well done, Tony Lapidus. That's good, isn't it, Alex?
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. He gets every single mannerism absolutely spot on. I love it when people can do that, when people are that good at impersonating other people, that they don't even have to look like the person, that you just know instantly who it's supposed to be.
Very true. And it's nice to end on something like that also gives us a bit of joy, but makes a political point, which we were trying to make. Alex Phillips, so brilliant to have you. And of course, Alex is the author of That's What She Said, which you can find on Substack. Thank you, Alex. We will speak next week. Now, lots of comments coming in from you today. Thank you, Dog Boy, for your super chat. Very much appreciated. Simon writes, Farage at one point was going to put money into the grooming gang inquiry. What happened with that? Well, I'll tell you what happened with that. He said that there is no point doing it at the moment when there is no official powers for the grooming gang inquiry. So Reform dropped it, although they have said that they would do a grooming gang inquiry, an official inquiry, if they do get into government. But that's why Rupert Lowe crowdfunded. Honestly, the crowdfund is I think it's close to £700,000 now. Joe Spencer wrote, I think the Conservatives will come back with new blood and possibly Lowe. You know I'm going to find it hard to vote for the Conservatives again, Joe, but I do love the work that Robert Jenrick is doing. I really, really do. And Jenrick and Lowe together, that would be a strong team. Shirley and Milton writes, I was very excited by the start of Reform and like Farage on Talking Pints on TV News. That was great, wasn't it? But, and it's a big but, we have one egotistical double cross in Downing Street now. We don't want to replace him with another. KH Gamer says, yes, Matt Goodwin, Tice, Alex Towler, so many are brown nosy hoping for a ticket on the House of Commons gravy train. And Glenn Rowan writes, 13 million voters voted to leave. It was more than that. I gave the full figure later. And this is supposed to be a democracy. Get this, get out. We can't afford another 4 years of his crap. Oh my God, I couldn't agree. How are we going to cut? I knew he was going to be a disaster. There's the total. I knew he was going to be an absolute disaster. And I warned of this. All of these people are saying, oh no, he's not going to be as bad as you think. He's a centrist. No. He was going to be a disaster. He is trying to undo everything, including Brexit. Okay, Greatest Britain Union Jackass time now. A reminder of your nominees. Emily Maitlis, nominated by Dorothy Smith for branding Rupert Lowe racist rather than caring about the actual grooming gangs. Keir Starmer, nominated by JHP, this time for resetting Brexit and giving away fishing rights. And Gary Lineker, nominated by Mad Dog Photo for his constant anti-Semitic behaviour online. I had a feeling it would go this way. Lineker, third place, 6%. Runner-up, Emily Maitlis, 10%. Your Union Jackass today with 84% of the vote, Keir Starmer. Do you know what? Slippery Starmer, you're awful, but we might put Maitlis and Gary Lineker up again tomorrow, right? Because when you're up against Starmer, it's just impossible. And our Greatest Britain, Alison Pearson, nominated by Edward A297, as her support for Lucy Connolly has been unwavering. She's a lovely person as well, so that is a plus. And I have to thank you. Since Alison and I launched the crowdfund for Lucy Connolly. I think we only launched it on Friday. Honestly, we've received over £70,000. This is all for Lucy Connolly, for helping her rebuild when she's out of prison. Unfortunately, still no decision from the Court of Appeal, but we will be keeping very closely on this case. Coming up in the Uncancelled After Show on Substack, she's done it again. Meghan Markle's shock feud with ex-Vogue editor Edward Enninful has been revealed. We're going to reveal exactly what happened as we team up with the Royal News Network. So at this stage, we come off YouTube and Rumble. We move to Substack to continue the conversation. www.outspoken.live. Please do sign up there. Back tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hit subscribe right now on YouTube and Rumble to be alerted of our new episodes. And most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.